Today, we're going to be diving into the Peruvian Nazca mummies. We're also going to talk about the Mexican congressional hearing where bodies were presented to the world by Jaime Maussan, as well as the more recent bodies that were presented in Los Angeles at a press conference earlier this month. In this episode, we'll also be talking to our very own disclosure reporter, Aslan, who went to the press conference in person, recorded, took photos and translated, and dives into the science presented and the nuance. We'll also hear from Jaime Maussan directly, Melissa Tittle, who filmed a documentary about some of the bodies and spoke to me last year, as well as a deep dive Q&A with Aslan, Tom and I later in this episode. So here's Melissa Tittle telling me all about her exposure to some of the mummies during her filming of Unearthing Nazca, the complete story. And I know that you had some involvement with some, I think it was I saw a clip of you from 2018, where you had some involvement with the mummies from Peru. You did a show on that. Are you able to give us a bit of sort of background into that and kind of your thoughts on the Mexican Congress, if that's okay?
Yes. So that whole thing started back in 2017. We got a call. I was working at Gaia as head of content at this moment in time. We got a call from Jaime Maussan about some bodies that had been found in Peru. I think everybody thought it was bullshit. So we were like, okay, send us pictures. They sent us pictures. We still didn't. It was like, no, that can't be real. They have like white powder on them. And then they sent somebody down from the company. It wasn't me the first time. And kind of to look at the first bodies. And there was some interest. Okay, it is really weird. If they made this, we're not sure how they made it. So let's bring some scientists in and get some, local understanding, right, of what's happening. So that's where I got involved, and I went and brought a bunch of scientists from different countries and Peru. We had definitely a lot of scientists from Peru, and we actually reached out to the Peruvian government and told them, because one of the things I think I wanted to be careful of is that we didn't want to do something illegal. So we made sure that the people involved reached out to the government, said that we had found these bodies and we want you to come check them out. They denied our request and said that it was fake and, whatever. So we kept moving on with it. I saw that there was a couple of videos on Reddit that surfaced of me because I was in like a scrub suit, and I totally forgot about all that. It was pretty exciting. It was exciting to be part of something that could be groundbreaking. But once again, you're dealing with something that was convoluted with a lot of lies, and people involved were not trustworthy and definitely full of BS. But I would have to say that the Mexican bodies that ended up in Mexico, I really had a hard time believing that those were real. I mean, from an anatomic, not that different anatomic situations can't happen in the universe, it just, we did x-rays and CAT scans. The togetherness of the body just wasn't, I don't know, it was weird. And we couldn't test on those bodies. They wouldn't let us cut them up at all, right? Like they wouldn't let us take samples and get them tested. So that was a red flag for me. The bigger body, which is not talked about in the Mexican hearing, is this body called Maria, right? She had an elongated head, 3 fingers, 3 toes. And we had x-rays, CAT scans. We had a God, I can't remember what it's called, tomography done. So you could see the bands of muscles wrap around the bones and all that. So you can really see details. You can cut inside and you can see if anybody manipulated anything. It was pretty fascinating. And genetic testing proved that the fingers, the torso, the body, the head, like all the skin that we could grab in different parts, and the toes, they were all connected to the same DNA, which if they were different body parts, that wouldn't happen. I found her to be the most interesting. So before Mexican Congress, there was a Peruvian hearing where the government had, again, they're always informed, but now they were like, okay, what's happening? So they had a Peruvian hearing where all the evidence from all the different countries was brought forward. The bodies were presented. What do you want to do with them? There was some interest, but there was a lot of very upset antiquities people that were like, you're doing this on purpose and selling them on the black market and, whatever. The bodies ended up going to a university in Ica, and that is where the testing continued, was not involved at that point. Now, that was 2020. Cut to, all of a sudden, the smaller bodies have shown up in the Mexican Congress, and Jaime Maussan is involved again, bringing them forth. And I can't say that there was any genetic testing done. I don't know what Jaime did later. I just knew that they ended up in a university. So what I can say about the whole venture was that I found Maria to be quite interesting, because if she was manipulated, all of the doctors that looked at it, all of our data from the high-tech CAT scans to the tomography did not prove there was any manipulation with that body. And the funny thing is, that is the one thing that has not surfaced, right? So the smaller bodies that we personally didn't have any testing on then surfaced up in Mexico. And I love Jaime. I think he's great, and he's very passionate about the UFO field. I just don't know if he jumps to conclusions a lot.
So clearly Jaime has a colourful history, and we know that some of his previous claims have been somewhat questionable. But as Melissa alludes to, these are different, and some fresh corroborating data that impressed their independent team. So first, the Mexican congressional hearing.
Scientists in Mexico pulling back the curtain on what they believe are aliens and put two of those corpses on display. Take a look. These small mummified specimens were unveiled at Mexico's first ever UFO hearing yesterday. Yeah, it looks like E.T. You're right. The alleged alien corpses were found in Peru. They're believed to be 700 to 1,800 years old. They only had 3 fingers and elongated heads. X-rays of the aliens were also shown, and experts say one of the bodies has eggs inside of it.
It's the queen of all evidence. If the DNA is showing us that they are not human beings and that there is nothing that looks like this in the world, we should take it as such.
The congressional hearing in Mexico didn't go well. The bodies stole the show, and no one really paid attention to the data presented. Instead, the event was shrouded in controversy as the Peruvian government distanced itself from Jaime's claims. We also saw that Ryan Graves was angered by the bodies stealing the show and turning this into a bit of a circus.
Okay. So you can do it somewhere else, or you cannot do it.
So you whatever you want.
Okay. So
You don't want it?
you want no?
Okay. You want to do it with him just with him?
Wherever I can do it with all the media, but I don't want to do it in front of the bodies.
Okay.
I'll do it somewhere
I will
else.
change.
But I
Okay.
don't want to do
Just
it.
give me 1 second, please.
And there came the inevitable mockery.
I care about,
and they did, and here we are.
Oh, I love this. I
There we
love
are.
these.
There
There were
you
2
go.
of them.
There's 2 of them?
There was 2 of them.
Sure, you always need a spare.
Yeah.
It has just now been revealed that the aliens that Mexico showed us earlier in the week was cake the entire time.
Oh, for once in my life, let me.
Many saying that the bodies presented took away from the significant steps forward that the UAP, UFO, non-human intelligence community had pushed forward. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. However, after the congressional hearing and all of the controversy, Jaime seemed to have learned a lesson. He came back stronger, more evidence and data driven. And as we saw from the Los Angeles press conference where new bodies were presented to the world, this was presented by scientists, specialist doctors, a forensic archaeologist, with less grandstanding and more data. So let's talk about these 2 new mummies. Now, as Melissa had mentioned earlier on, one of the most interesting mummies that she wasn't able to really investigate was Maria. And strangely enough, Maria was one of the 2 new mummies presented in the Los Angeles press conference. Our man Aslan was there in person at the press conference reporting back, and he took this footage.
Experience for all of you. And for everybody watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for not listening to the chatter and coming forward with an open mind so that you can receive what we believe to be the most incredible finding of our time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Like many of you, last year I saw the viral story where Jaime Maussan brought what was described as dead aliens in front of the Mexican Congress. The story blew up, a lot of people had a laugh, and I had tons of people asking me, is it real, is it fake? And I had no idea, but I had a strong suspicion that this was fake. So my producing partner, Serena Ducey, and I, we decided to go down to Mexico City and do our own investigation. And when we got there, it was immediately clear that this story was much more complicated and much more interesting than what the general public has been shown. So first of all, the caliber of scientists involved in this case is exceptional, as you're going to see today. You're going to hear from many of these guys. Number two, none of the people involved are claiming that these are aliens. Let me repeat that. None of the people involved are claiming that these are extraterrestrials. These are 1,000-year-old beings. They seem to represent a new species. And the DNA analysis that's been done so far on some of the beings suggests that they are genetic experiments or genetically engineered, which begs the question, who had the ability to do genetic engineering 1,000 years ago?
And then we have Josephine. You can see the eggs also, Lisa, and you can see how they are irrigated. That's impossible to fake.
And to have the privilege of knowing and learning this exactly body. I will use my testimony in Spanish for being a proud Mexican scientist.
Dedos en manos y pies es una de las características más notables, al igual que su cabeza alargada. ¿Qué más vemos, doctor?
Vamos a empezar entonces con la...
It was a great scoop by Aslan and fantastic for him to report back for us. So we sat down with Aslan to discuss what he thought, what he felt, what he saw, and any impression that he got from how seriously this will be taken.
He presented these bodies, right, from Nazca, and then he presented quite a lot of evidence, a lot of scientists. And what caught my attention was who was one of the lead scientists is actually the director, national health of the Navy. So this is a top contender person.
And there was were there kind of mainstream media there, or were they mainly kind of, were they well-known kind of media companies or organizations? Was there much interest from that?
It was a mix of independent researchers, independent people from Hollywood. I see some faces like Michael, forget his last name. He's the guy that did Unacknowledged. And what is it? Context of the Fifth Kind?
Right.
I forgot what the movie is called. So yeah, there was just some, but there wasn't as much media as we had hoped, because to be quite frank, the whole event was not as organized as it should have been. You know, they had some issues with technicalities. Also the invitations like last minute for a lot of the people there. So most of the people say the same thing. It was like a last minute event, and you can tell by how it was a bit unorganized.
Yeah.
You need to be quite transparent.
What was the atmosphere like though? Because was it sort of, was everybody there taking it seriously and treating it with the sort of respect
Yes.
that it?
So I can tell you right off the bat, from the moment I arrived at the hotel, the valet people were, intaking people. They knew something important was going on, so the valet was like paid for. Everything was being very welcoming, and I noticed that a lot of the people there were very intrigued. There was a lot of excitement in here, both from the planners and people working the event, and you could see a lot of like tension in the room, like what's going on, what are they going to present. So the one thing I could take away from it is that people were very excited. Sure.
Awesome. Because Melissa Tittle, when she was on the podcast, she was talking about the ones that came out 6 months ago. And she said that some of those were actually really convincing, if you like, if for want of a better word, that they seemed perfectly legitimate and stuff. So did they mention those at all? Was there any sort of update on
Yes.
that?
So one of the questions I was able to ask, because it was presentation was very formal, but the questions was more like it turned more of like a little cocktail feedback where you can actually ask the people directly. I spoke to her, I spoke to Jaime, for some things, and some of the questions that I asked was regarding like the previous, bodies, what's going on with them, and the answer is the fact that they have multiple bodies that are being analyzed and researched, and they're going to be doing now a sequence of every single body that they're finding. So the previous ones are still under research, and this one is just the new research that they're doing on these bodies.
When you went there, what was your take on this? Did you have a kind of a position on where did you feel as if this was kind of a legitimate thing? Because there'd been a lot of talk in the press at the Mexican Congress, and a lot of people, certainly from within the kind of UFO subject, had been quite kind of belittling of the Mexican Congress.
Yes, and I can see the reason for that is that can happen if you don't do the right research. Because when I first heard about the first hearing, I went in there and I started analyzing what are the data they're presenting, who are the speakers. That's why I sent you the page, because the actual speaker not just anyone. I wrote some notes down. He's the director of the Mexican Navy's Scientific Institute of Law. He is also the chief of legal forensics. So he's the authority when it comes to forensics, and he has claimed regarding his findings is that he puts his degrees, his experience, and his field experience that one are they're biological species. They were organically existing in our planet. And number three is there's no known data for these bodies, meaning that a new species that we are unaware of. Just the sheer amount of data that was given and people that were speaking on it, that for once is very convincing. But what I saw is that just like it happened over there, and just how it happened here in the United States, where there's a lot of like pushback from government and certain institutions, that started happening in Peru, and it also started happening in Mexico, and they started providing pushback data that were not of the original body. If that makes sense. They show us pictures of bodies that they had been that they presented, which were very different from the bodies that Jaime Maussan and his team had researched on. And they actually asked those same questions to the scientists in Peru. Are you talking about the bodies that Jaime Maussan, presented? And their answer was the fact that no, they're different bodies, but it's right. So there's this information. So if you guys follow the prompts, you guys are going to see that there's a lot of this information as well. So my perspective going into this is that I'm going to go open-minded, but I'm not going to carry any conclusions. What's important is not my conclusions. What's important is exactly what Jaime's team is requesting: a consensus world scientific community. That is what even Neil deGrasse Tyson said himself. That at least this team is saying, hey, we're not just making these claims. Here's this evidence that you guys can analyze. So that's very powerful. And now when you have one of the authorities in the Latin American community, giving his license on the line, that should at least say something. It doesn't, at the end of the day, guys, it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what I see, you go there. What matters is that who are the authorities that can verify and are able to create a consensus of humanity. And that's what needs to be pushed, and that's what they're willing to do.
What did they say was their next step?
They're going to have a sequence of hearings and presentations. So every single time that these events are being held, the scientific community is welcome to ask questions and also gain samples. They're open to being given samples. And I know, and which exactly how you had asked is that what is the take? I think is that there's a lot of curiosity, especially from the scientific community, right? So there were scientists there that did not want to disclose it. I was able to be pointed out at one from, I think, UCLA. I'm not sure if the other one was from Caltech. And there was at least 5 or 6 scientists. And yeah, the feel is that there's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of validity that is possible. But there's a lot of criticism I want to deal with.
Was there any kind of comment around sort of peer reviewing? Because I hear this quite often, this term where they've got data, but it's not been peer reviewed, and therefore we can't kind of take it seriously. And that's kind of the narrative that you tend to hear again and again. But it sounds as if they're very open to sharing that data. And I know that recently there was a link posted with several gigabytes of data sort of open.
Right. And that's just the piece of the data for each specimens that were presented, right? And I mean, my son says, like in his website, whoever requested information, it's out there right now. You can actually access it. And that's also what the doctor, what's his name? Dr. Jose de Jesus said, is that the information is there. And anybody that is requesting it, you don't have to ask them. Go ahead and find it.
Yeah. The narrative that I keep hearing from most people that are kind of within that kind of UFO circle is that because this guy has previously had some cases that have been dubious, we can't then take serious anything he says going forward, which kind of suggests that him being the kind of front man for the data and for the bodies, essentially, he's the kind of person presenting, he's the kind of person putting the information out, sharing the data. Because of that simple point of him being involved, everybody kind of steps back and says, we're not even listening or diving into it to see whether or not there's something there that we should be paying attention to. We just not. And that seems like
you know what? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just thinking that kind of seems like a problem to kind of push it forward, if that makes sense.
No, of course, and it's the same thing with, like, look at all the events and all the things that are going on right now with the UAP field and non-human intelligence. Every single time, like with the report that we just had, the report has come out, and look at all the tabloids, all the news links that are being sent out right now, saying as that is the consensus, right? The Pentagon says one thing, therefore that's what it is. But all of us that have been doing just a little bit more research, we know that there's a narrative that they're trying to. Same thing with so if you research Nazca mummies right now on Google, you're gonna find like the first 15 articles are like Nazca mummies have been proven to be fake. They have been hoaxed. You're not gonna find the information like what I'm presenting to you right now. If you just Google it, but you have to look at all the different resources that are out there. If you want to be fair, you want to be approach it from a scientific approach.
I think that's very, very fair, considering all the news stories on sort of Congress and all the sort of all the latest gossip in this field. It's so hard to find anything about these mummies. I've been doing some research prior to our conversation, and the only stuff that you'll find is about the 6 months ago case. There's so little out there where people are actually talking about this, or and also I think working against it is the old story from Atacama where Dr. Greer had sent one to Stanford for testing, and it turned out to be a little girl. So I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are kind of pretending not to be interested, but probably are quite curious. You know what I mean?
Yes. But that's what's important is that it's kind of like that story, the kid that by wolf. Maybe there's going to be a lot of fakes here and there, but if something continues to recur, are we going to disregard it forever? It's like like when did I decide to become a disclosure agent? I have always been curious since I was small. Like, is there life out there? Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. That's just like the same standard everybody has had. It wasn't until 2017 the story broke out that the U.S. government has a UFO research program. It's like, that's really, and you have all these thoughts can come in. Are they researching maybe the possibility of life out there? Are they what's going on? And there's a trail that you follow.
What was your kind of thoughts coming out of it? So obviously you've got this kind of open mind going in. You've kind of researched in the past cases, and you kind of got an understanding of what you're going to be presented. You're then presented this kind of information, these kind of credible people that are giving you this information. When you left, as you're kind of driving home, what are your thoughts? Are you more kind of on the side of this is genuine, this is legitimate? Where do you kind of sit on the kind of scale there as you're leaving?
The same way I feel about like UAPs and NHIs. Like, the more you research it, the more you understand that the possibility exists. Okay, so going into it, like, I came in with an open mind. Leaving from it is like, hey, there is a possibility, actually a high possibility that this is legit. But again, this is why it's imperative and it's important for other scientists. Same thing that Michio Kaku has said. Right now, the burden is not only on the people claiming it, the burden on the people is like the government or the scientific community that it doesn't exist. This could easily be squashed if credible universities just do their diligence, just say, hey, this claim can't go on forever the way it's being handled. Like, we need more